Hi, I'm Martin Spafford, and myself and Kate Morse, we've been running an enrichment day together with the team at Hackney Archives, a day really exploring what the archives and the site can tell us about the history of the Dalston Square site. How has it changed over time and why? And the way we've done this is we started by taking 6 young people. We've got 6 young people from Hackney Collegiate College and from Mulberry School, and we took them down to the site. Lisa from Hackney Archives gave them a great tour where they had to look at clues to the past of the site without actually being told what those clues were telling them and begin to make sense of them. So they were looking at, for example, the names of the housing blocks and how they began to discover that those housing blocks were named after musicians. The memorial to the New Cross fire and trying to work out why there's a memorial to a fire that took place in South London here in Hackney. And they looked at the remnants of the Dalston Theatre that were kind of a part of the structure of the square. They looked like kind of Greek gods, and we're wondering what on earth they were doing there. So it was planting in them various questions that were not fully resolved. There seemed to be a connection with music, there seemed to be a connection in some ways with ancient Greece, which they couldn't make sense of. And they also looked at the interpretation panels at the front of the square, which gave them a little bit of background information. But then their main source was coming back here and looking at archives that the archivists had laid out for them. And these archives covered the early they covered maps through the period, and they looked at the way in which, from the maps, they saw the changes that happened. For example, how Dalston Junction Station grew and then disappeared and then reappeared. How there was a large building, and it wasn't clear what that large building was, next to Dalston Junction Station, which they later discovered was the theatre that had previously been a circus and later became a cinema. And they began to piece together the different aspects of the story, both of the change of the site over time, and then of the whole existence of a centre for popular music, particularly black music at the Four Aces Club, and also rave music at the Labyrinth Club, and how when the regeneration was going to happen, there was then a campaign and a conflict as sections of the community opposed the regeneration and others supported it. And they looked at what the issues were around those. Also understood that around the story of Sir Collins and his son, a performer at the New Four Aces Club, who had died in the New Cross fire, what the connection was with the Memorial Garden, and seeing in some ways how all of these stories interconnected in unexpected ways. And then the task they had was, first of all, to look through the archive materials, understand what they learned from those, think about those, and then we asked them, perhaps you might look at this, we asked them to map this out using paper plates and arrows, looking at some of the questions that they had explored and that they asked themselves, the answers that they'd found on Post-it, some of the sources that they'd used to find that, and getting a kind of sense both of their progression, but also, most importantly, about the interconnectedness of what they found out. And then we went into a discussion of what overarching themes they thought this story included. They came up with art and music, culture, inequality, regeneration and preservation. And then we also looked at some of the concepts like change, cause, effect, interpretation, continuity, that were also part of the process that they went through and the story that they began to understand. And we asked them to construct a timeline informed by what they had researched and discovered here. And at the moment, while I'm speaking, the young people are in another section of the archive, and they've got the task now of imagining that we're an audience who know nothing at all about this story, and they've got to tell us everything that they've discovered about the history of the Dalston Square site, and they've got to present it to us in an engaging, entertaining and creative way, and they've got half an hour to work out how to do it.